Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into what is arguably one of the greatest masterclasses in corporate strategy and market disruption ever seen, Reliance Jio's entry into the Indian telecom market. We're going to unpack a move that didn't just shake up a single industry, it literally rewired the digital economy of an entire nation.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the Pre-Jio Telecom Paradox, then the greenfield 4G bet, followed by zero-price market creation. After that, we'll see the shift from telecom to platform. And finally, we'll tackle the big question. Was it disruption or predation?
Okay, let's kick things off with part 1, the Pre-Jio Telecom Paradox.
So cast your mind back to early 2016. There was this glaring contradiction in the market. On one hand, you had 936 million telecom subscribers. That is near ubiquitous mobile ownership. But internet penetration, it sat at a dismal 30%. People had the devices, sure, but the digital economy was barely functioning. You probably remember the feeling. YouTube buffering endlessly on 3G, digital payments feeling like a total pipe dream, and e-commerce being strictly restricted to the urban middle class.
And the real bottleneck here, it was entirely driven by price. With mobile data costing upwards of 250 rupees per gigabyte, it was treated like a luxury good, not an everyday commodity. Just to put that into perspective for you, a daily wage worker earning, say, 400 rupees a day had to spend more than half of their daily income just to consume a single gigabyte of data. So the demand wasn't absent at all, it was just heavily suppressed.
Meanwhile, the four major incumbents dominating the market, well, they were actually quite comfortable with this status quo. They were engaged in what industry analysts call tacit coordination. See, their revenues were largely dependent on legacy 2G voice calls. The transition to a 4G data-first world, they would have had to basically cannibalize their own voice revenues and take these massive, painful accounting write-offs on their existing 2G and 3G infrastructure. Add to that interconnection usage charges, which are basically the tolls networks charge each other to connect calls, and those acted as a huge financial moat against any new entrants. The incumbents felt completely secure.
That brings us to our second section, the greenfield 4G bet.
Now, this disruption actually began quietly, about 6 years prior to their commercial launch. Back in 2010, Reliance acquired a little-known company called Infotel, and honestly, this was the masterstroke. Infotel had uniquely secured broadband wireless spectrum in all 22 Indian telecom circles. This gave Reliance the exclusive rights to build a nationwide, 4G-only network completely free from the legacy constraints of 2G or 3G technology that were holding the incumbents back.
Which leads us to this absolutely staggering figure. Roughly 1.5 lakh crore rupees, or about 22 billion US dollars, was poured into building a 280,000-kilometer fiber backbone and an all-IP VoLTE architecture. And here's the crazy part. They deployed all this capital before a single rupee of revenue had ever been earned. I mean, talk about a decisive all-in bet.
In game theory, this perfectly illustrates a core concept known as a credible commitment. By literally sinking $22 billion into the ground, Reliance sent a deliberate, unmistakable signal to the incumbents. It basically said, hey, we are firmly entrenched, we have vastly superior infrastructure, and we are absolutely not leaving.
All right, let's move to Section 3, Zero-Price Market Creation.
So Mukesh Ambani takes the stage on September 5, 2016, and announces unlimited free voice calls and free data. By offering this zero-price strategy right up front, Jio triggered just explosive market creation. Get this growth trajectory: 10 million users in 17 days, 50 million in 83 days, and a staggering 100 million users in under 6 months. For context, achieving that exact same level of scale took Facebook 4.5 years.
Now, while the consumers obviously rejoiced, the financial devastation for the competition was immediate. There was a sudden one-third collapse in industry-wide average revenue per user, or ARPU. It dropped from a very stable 120 rupees all the way down to 82.7 rupees by March 2017. That sheer drop drained roughly 100 billion rupees from the Indian telecom sector almost overnight.
And the sheer force of this zero-price strategy, it triggered a brutal, rapid consolidation phase. A previously crowded market of 12 operators rapidly shrank down to a highly distressed oligopoly. Market leaders like Airtel managed to survive. Vodafone and Idea were literally forced to merge just to stay alive, while others like Reliance Communications and Aircel went bankrupt entirely.
Which perfectly sets up Section 4, from telecom to platform.
You see, just as Jack Ma built digital infrastructure like Alipay purely to enable commerce on his platform, Mukesh Ambani used the Telecom network to construct India's largest consumer technology platform right from the ground up. The 14 proprietary apps Jio launched, things like Jio Cinema and Jio Money, well, they weren't just there to entertain. They were strategically designed to make high-volume data consumption a habit from day one. Think about how quickly we all became accustomed to streaming video on the go. That was exactly the behavioral shift they were engineering.
And this platform thesis was overwhelmingly validated during the 2020 COVID-19 lockdown. Get this, Jio platforms raised an astonishing 1.52 lakh crore rupees. They brought in heavy-hitting tech giants like Meta to integrate WhatsApp with JioMart Commerce and Google to co-develop affordable 5G Android devices. This move essentially transformed Jio from a mere data pipe into a completely indispensable digital ecosystem.
This seamless transition from a simple telecom provider to a platform giant is perfectly reflected in their staggering revenue trajectory. From its first full year of operations, revenue ballooned to over 100,000 crore rupees by the 2023-2024 financial year. That massive $22 billion infrastructure bet, yeah, it had paid off spectacularly.
Finally, let's dive into our last section, disruption or predation.
This right here is the million-dollar question. Critics of Jio's entry argue that this was sheer predation, a new business being heavily cross-subsidized by a parent company with a massive corporate war chest right up until the competitor simply died off. But on the flip side, defenders claim it was a much-needed enforcement of competitive discipline against incumbents who had basically been rent-extracting from Indian consumers for a decade. And the truth is, both sides hold really valid economic arguments based on the data.
When we map this to Clayton Christensen's famous disruptive innovation framework, Jio only partially fits the mold. Christensen generally suggests that disruptors target non-consumers with a basic, good-enough solution. Jio certainly targeted non-data consumers, but they launched with vastly superior 4G technology and drastically lower prices right out of the gate, so they really defied those traditional disruption models.
But regardless of your verdict on the competitive tactics, we absolutely have to acknowledge the undeniable social dividends here. India's monthly data consumption saw a 60 times increase. Unleashing this mass internet access catalyzed everything from 83 billion UPI digital transactions in a single year to the absolute explosion of rural edtech and regional content creation. Jio essentially laid the physical tracks for India's modern digital economy. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. A market that once had 12 players now essentially operates with 3, and functionally, it behaves a lot like a duopoly. Considering recent tariff hikes and the immense barriers to entry for any future competitors, we have to ask, was the long-term cost of a consolidated market worth the short-term shock of cheap data? It's a fascinating question of market dynamics, and I hope this explainer has given you a clearer framework to think about it. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.